The Raiders get embarrassed by the Bengals right before the bye week. How did it happen, and what does that mean? That plus a whole lot more on Monday's edition of the Locked On Raiders podcast, November 4th, 2024.
You are Locked On Raiders, your daily Las Vegas Raiders podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And welcome in, Raider Nation, to another edition of the Locked On Raiders podcast. Thank you so much for making the show your first listen of the day. We do appreciate you, whether you check it out wherever you get your favorite podcast or if you're checking us out on YouTube. Either way, it is great. We love it. We do appreciate you. Again, I always say, whether you give us 3 minutes, 33 minutes, whatever the case may be, something in between, we appreciate it. If you are checking us out on YouTube, big shout out to my man Ari, who does a fantastic job making sure we're on YouTube each and every day. We definitely appreciate him and shout him out. He's on Twitter at Ari Producers. You can hit me up as well at your boy Q254. And we got the Locked On Raider podcast voicemail line at 707-654-4693. Got a lot to get to on today's show. We will close out the show with your calls and texts. And when the Raiders get embarrassed by the Cincinnati Bengals Week 9 action, as they did, you can imagine that the calls, the texts, are not too, well, team-friendly. So that's coming up to close out the show today. We'll talk about the bye week and what we could see going into the bye week, coming out of the bye week, what this whole week can mean while the Raiders don't have any games to play. Very, very important week for the Silver and Black. We'll talk about that in segment number 2. Here in segment number 1, just news and notes, really just going over the game and, you know, kind of when I realized that it was going to be a done deal against Cincinnati, as the Raiders are now 2-7. We'll get into all of that after I tell you about the title sponsor of the show, which is FanDuel. And, of course, you can get into the season with the big return on FanDuel. All new customers can place a $5 bet, and you'll get started with $150 in bonus bets. That is guaranteed. So, off top, I'm not at Studio Q. I'm not in Las Vegas. I'm actually in Bristol, Connecticut, and I was traveling all day on Sunday. Got up very early in the morning, hit the airport there in Las Vegas, and I had to fly to Denver, then fly to Hartford, and then drive into Bristol. So all day long on Sunday, I spent really traveling. Thank goodness. Thank goodness I was traveling. I was watching the game, had the iPad all locked and loaded on the airplane and was following along with the game. I had a couple people sitting either side of me. They were watching along as well. And man, oh man, it didn't take long for me to realize exactly what kind of game it was going to eventually be. The Raiders lose 42-24. And Raider Nation, I'll tell you this, and I'm sure you already know. You don't need me to break it to you. It never felt like it was even that close, right? They're 2-7 overall in the record. They're now tied for the worst record in the league. If you're one of those that is looking at tankathon.com every single day and you want to know when the draft order would be, and I know there's a lot of folks that are doing that, and I don't blame you at this stage of the game, right? When they're 2-7 overall in the season, of course a lot of folks are going to be doing that. Well, if the season were to end on Sunday, they would be picking number 5 overall. So that just kind of lets you know where they are, as far as that goes. And again, not something that I want to really deep dive into, but the way that these Raiders have been losing, and they're currently on a 5-game losing streak, really can't help but to talk about what's next, like next season for the Silver and Black. But getting back to the game on Sunday, watching the game from the plane, I see the Raiders go down, have a nice drive, get into the end zone, right? The scripted plays always works really well, right? Zamir White, you see him get into the end zone and thinking, okay, cool. They have a nice little, nice little scoring drive. Can Luke Getsy, the next time they come out, can he do that? So I kind of held my breath on that one. I wasn't too confident if he was going to be able to. But what concerned me is not the fact that the next time the Raiders got the ball, they weren't able to go and have a nice long drive and get into the end zone or even get a field goal. They had to punt. Or that, the offense started to, look the same as it always does, really no rhyme or reason. That wasn't really bothering me. Well, it's not what bothered me the most about Sunday's game. What bothered me the most about Sunday's game is the defense. And the reason why the defense has bothered me on Sunday is because, well, I talked about the defense in great detail, going all the way back to training camp and how that was going to be the leader of the team. And it looked like they couldn't stop me or you from scoring on Sunday. I mean, think about this. This is all you needed to know by halftime. And the score was close at halftime. But by halftime, I felt like, yeah, this is game, set, match. The Raiders aren't going to win this one. This is the Bengals' drives in the first half. First drive, 13 plays, 70 yards, touchdown. Took 7:57 off the clock. Second drive, 14 plays, 64 yards, field goal. Took 6 minutes and 29 seconds off the clock. Third drive, 5 plays, 70 yards, touchdown. Took 2:26 off the clock. The next time they got the ball in the first half was just to kneel down and go into the locker room. They really only had 3 drives in the first half. Why did they only have 3 drives? Because all their drives were lengthy. 13 plays, 14 plays, 70 yards, 64 yards, 70 more yards. Like that's why the defense couldn't stop anything. The defense was not good. And that's the one area that should be a non-negotiable. The defense should be really good because, again, we all knew that the offense was going to be on the struggle bus, but the defense was supposed to do the heavy lifting. And for them just to have that kind of a performance, I mean, it just looked like Joe Burrow and company could do anything they wanted to. There was a point where Joe Burrow was 15 for 15. 15 for 15 in the game. It's just, it was insane. It just looked like he could do whatever he wanted to do. And even going back to last week against Kansas City, they were 12 for 16 on third down. It looked like it was even easier for Cincinnati on Sunday. And I know Cincinnati has a really good defense. Don't get me wrong, but they still were a 3-5 team, right? So they still have their struggles. And offensively, they had absolutely no struggles on Sunday. And this stat really stood out to me as well about the Raiders. They've now been outscored 46-6 in the last 2 minutes of a half this season. That is the very worst in the league. And again, I felt like the game was over at halftime, and it was 17-10, right? It was still, obviously, there's plenty of football. Jack Jones comes up with a pick six late in the game. Max Crosby made a couple plays here and there. Desmond Ridder, he showed up, and he got into action because they were looking for a spark. I mean, there was a lot of different areas of this game that you could take away. But all in all, I really felt confident that this one was over by halftime just because the defense couldn't stop me or you from scoring. It just felt that simple. And then when the early fumble with DJ Turner, the handoff from Minshew to Turner, and he fumbles it, puts it on the ground, and the Bengals recover it, that's when you're, okay, done deal. It's over. So as I'm scrolling through like Sunday Ticket while I'm on the plane, I had a couple different screens open at one time, just checking out a few scores. And it's funny, I was on a United airline, and they actually had DirecTV on the flight. And so I was checking out the Commanders and the Giants game, and I was looking at the Giants thinking, man, the Giants have the same tendencies that the Raiders. Like, I could see the same kind of tendencies. And there's no shock that they have the same overall record as the Raiders, right? I mean, it just isn't. They're just a bad team, and clearly the Raiders are as well, which is, again, unfortunate. I knew the team wasn't going to be some dominant offensive team, but I thought with the way that the defense was going to be able to carry the load and really do a lot of the heavy lifting, this team was going to be competitive game in and game out. And unfortunately, as they're riding a 5-game losing streak, they are everything but competitive. Right after the game, Antonio Pierce met with the media, as he always does. I just took a couple minutes of what he had to say. He probably talked for about 5 or 6 minutes. I just took a couple minutes just to kind of go over some key parts of what I thought was important from some of the questions that he was asked following the game. Here's Antonio Pierce.
Antonio, do you feel like you guys have hit rock bottom, or where do you guys go from?
Today was a good day in the office. Got the bye week to reset. You look at everything. And when I say everything, everything.
Is there anything that you can put your finger on why it's
that wasn't a good enough effort. Obviously, the score tells you that. It looked like that the entire game, except for probably the first quarter. But again, just going to have to reset over the bye week. Got enough time to sit there and really dive into what we can do to fix this, because it can't continue.
Antonio, I know you guys have had some injuries on defense, but is there any explanation for why the defense hasn't played as well this year as it was last year?
I got a whole week to figure that out, and we got to do that. We got to do a better job as a staff. Today, what were they? 4 for 5 to start the game with scoring, and obviously that wasn't expected. And again, high expectations for the defense, and obviously we're not playing well enough.
Are you guys better at anything now than you were when you took over?
One more time.
Are you better at things now than when you took over?
The record says otherwise. Says that that's not.
Any preliminary word yet, Antonio, on the ankles for both Nate and Colton?
No, I mean, none of them obviously came back, so we'll get back to Vegas and obviously some more tests and see where we go from there.
Message to the team as they hit the bye week in terms of that reset.
Yeah, we got to reset. I mean, it goes for all of us. I mean, it's a group effort, it's a team effort. We all got to find a way to do better. We're going to pinpoint from this game and look at a lot of things, from coaches to play calling to players to execution to situations, that we all can do a much better job and put ourselves in position to, get into the fourth quarter and actually have a chance to win and not be always playing catch up.
Do you anticipate making any changes in terms of what?
I got to use a bye week to look at everything.
It's not just the bye week, Antonio, it's also the trade deadline coming up. I mean, does that weigh any heavier on you or any different?
That's probably a Telesco question. I mean, I'm sure there's options there. We'll see what we can do.
You guys scored a touchdown in the first possession, 4 of the last 5 games. Any theories as to why things have fallen off after that first drive?
We got this bye week to look at that.
I thought that one question from Ed Graney, is this team better now? Is this a better team now than what they were when you took over a year ago? And when he said The overall record doesn't say it is. That tells you all you need to know. And they're not, right? That's the unfortunate part. I didn't think that I would say that. I didn't think I'd get to a point where I said this team is not better than it was a year ago when Antonio Pierce took over. Because he did. He took over on Halloween. Well, Halloween is when McDaniels and Ziegler got fired, and he got officially introduced to the media on November 1st. So he's basically been on the job for a year, and I don't think that anybody can confidently say this team is better right now than they were when he took over. And that is a huge, huge disappointment. So there's a lot that's going to be done. There's going to be a lot of conversations that's going to be had this upcoming week. It's not only the bye week for the Raiders, which we all know a lot of changes happen in the bye week. Also, the trade deadline comes up at Tuesday. By 1 o'clock Pacific time, trades need to be made and could be made. The Raiders could be involved in that. We'll talk about the bye week. We'll talk about the trade deadline. We'll do that all coming up in segment number 2 of today's Locked On Raiders podcast. Before we get to that, though, I do want to tell you about a couple great sponsors here on the show, including Robinhood Gold. You don't need a silver spoon to eat up the financial favors of the 1%. Robinhood Gold allows others to get the rates and perks usually reserved for the high society. Now the resourceful individual with Robinhood Gold can earn the very liberal rate of 4.5% APY on uninvested cash and be rewarded with a handsome 3% retirement boost on an IRA account. Robinhood Gold provides the privileges of a high net worth for any net worth. These generous benefits are now available for only $5 a month. The new gold standard is here with Robinhood Gold. Sign up at Robinhood.com/gold. Terms apply. For our product specific disclosures, visit Robinhood.com/gold. Investing involves risk. Rate may change. Gold membership is offered by Robinhood Gold, LLC. I also want to tell you about Prize Picks. What is Prize Picks, Q? Well, it's the best place to get real money sports action. With over 10 million members and billions of dollars in awarded winnings, Prize Picks has made daily fantasy sports accessible to all. You pick more or less on at least 2 players for a shot to win up 100 times your cash. Run your game all season long on Prize Picks. Matter of fact, you can win up to 100 times your money with as little as 4 correct picks. It's the best way to get action on sports in over 30 states, including Cali, Florida, Georgia, and also Texas. Prize Picks now offers Venmo for quick and easy deposits and withdrawals into your account this sports season. So what do you need to do? Well, I'm glad you asked. All you need to do is download the app today. Use promo code LOCKEDONNFL to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Again, download the app. Use promo code LOCKEDONNFL. It's all one word, LOCKEDONNFL, to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks. Run your game. All right, Raider Nation, here we go. Segment number 2 of today's Locked On Raiders podcast. Want to turn my attention from the loss on Sunday because, again, I mean, there's so many different areas of the game I could talk about and break down and tell you what disappointed me and what I don't like. Again, my heavy disappointment on Sunday really had to do with the defense. The offense obviously was not very good either, but okay. The defense is what really has disappointed me. And look, right now, the Raiders are an embarrassment. I mean, there's no other way to put it, and they had an embarrassing loss on Sunday. And the one thing you cannot do, or you should not do, one great exercise that you should always try to exercise in the National Football League is not have an embarrassing loss heading into your bye week. Because, again, that is the week where all kind of changes can happen. And look, with Tom Brady being part of the minority ownership now, 10% minority ownership, I still don't have a firm answer on exactly what he's going to be in charge of. But it feels like that there's a changing of the guard when it comes to certain personnel, certain decisions that are going to be made with this team. So these are the times that you want to make good impressions. You want to make good impressions so you can solidify that, yes, I'm the right guy for the job. This is the right team. These are the right people in place, whatever that is, head coach, offensive coordinator, players. Like it's not exclusive to anybody, right? I mean, it's an everybody thing. And not to mention, you want to put a little bit more juice on it. Well, the trade deadline is coming up on Tuesday as well. So that was always something that I wanted to pay attention to. Like that was one of my biggest keys for this season is what does it look like when they get to the trade deadline? And that was my anticipation of still having Devontae Adams on the team. I thought, okay, if he's going to get traded, that's when it's going to be if the season seems like it's been off the rails or going off the rails. Well, it's off the rails. I think we could all say that with a lot of confidence, right? I'm not in the business of sugarcoating anything. I'm not in the business of blowing smoke up your backside. Like, I'm not going to do that. Call it what it is. It's the season's off the rails. It's 2-7, and that stinks. That's not the record that anyone wanted. It's not the record that most people anticipated, including myself. I know Antonio Pierce didn't anticipate this overall record that they're sitting at right now, and they've got a lot of questions that they need to answer. And as you heard in segment number 1, many times he answered the questions with, well, we got all of the bye week to figure it out. Well, he's got the bye week to figure out. He's not wrong. But there's others in that organization that have the bye week to figure things out as well. And that's why you never want to get embarrassed. Like the Raiders got embarrassed on Sunday, 42-24. And again, it wasn't even that close. They were definitely embarrassed. Now they're riding a 5-game losing streak. You know what that is? That's embarrassing, right? The strength of the team is supposed to be the defense, and it got dog walked up and down the field on Sunday. Again, just embarrassing. No rhyme or reason to the offense. Luke Getsy has gone from the field to the booth to just don't really have answers, right? Media members asking him about it being his fault and how he feels about that, and he's trying to deflect. And, I mean, it's just embarrassing, right? A team that has many coaches. They have 29 coaches on the staff. You know, it feels like they have more questions than answers. Doesn't feel like there's any rhyme or reason, right? It just seems like everyone's kind of looking around and looking for direction. But when you have that many coaches on the staff, you're supposed to be able to have answers to the test, and it just doesn't seem like they do. Also embarrassing, right? I expect changes. I expect plenty of changes, a handful of changes this week. It could be as simple as Luke Getsy getting the play calling removed from him. He could get fired. I don't know if they're gonna fire anyone this week. I mean, I just don't know because you got to play out the rest of the season anyway. But I could see them removing the play calling from him. Maybe give it to Scott Turner. Maybe giving it to Joe Philbin, somebody who feels comfortable in that role. You know, there's got to be Desmond Ridder. I have no doubt it's going to be the quarterback. I say I have no doubt. I shouldn't say it. Let me take that back. I'm not going to say I have no doubt. I truly believe he's going to be the quarterback coming out of the bye week. Let's put it like that. I've been saying that for a couple weeks, ever since the Raiders acquired him. So I think that he's going to be the guy. But, I mean, honestly, is he going to be a much of an upgrade? I mean, he's a guy that has some athletic ability, right? You saw a little bit of it on Sunday when he was put into the game versus the Bengals, and he didn't really get to show a whole lot of it off. But, I mean, he has that going for him. But, okay, the Raiders are riddled with injuries. You know, there was a couple guys that I was looking at and thought, well, maybe a team is going to try to reach out and trade for him. You know, and I honestly see one guy. Like, there's one guy I see on the staff or on the team that I could see a team trading for because he's a really good player, and that's Jakobi Meyers. And I've said that, I think I said that last week. And then they went out there and showcased him on Sunday, right? He had, 8 catches, over 100 yards on 11 targets. Obviously, Brock Bowers had his targets as well, which is what they're supposed to do. Those are the playmakers. But if there was any team that was maybe on the fence, should we go out and should we call the Raiders and inquire about Jakobi Meyers? I think what they saw on Sunday, what he did against Cincinnati, I think that would kind of seal the deal. Now, again, I'm not saying that he's going to get traded. I'm just saying if there's a player that any team out there might want, it would be him. He's a really good wide receiver, really good. And I mean, we've seen it since he's been a Raider, what he's been able to do, but you really saw it on display on Sunday against Cincinnati. I would kind of be shocked, though, that if any team were to go and trade, for a player from the Raiders right now, just because they don't really have too much and so many guys are banged up. I thought there was a chance that maybe like a Colton Miller could be grabbed by a team that's a playoff team, but their offensive line is a little shaky. But one, he got banged up. He left the stadium on Sunday in a walking boot, and he hasn't been that good this year anyway, right? So there's really there's not a whole lot that I could see there, but there's definitely going to be some changes that are going to be made. And look, I don't think that the Raiders are going to go to the extreme of firing anybody, but Antonio Pierce, as much as he said that he's going to, go through everything all week long and figure out what's going on and try to make some changes, he's also going to have to sit down in the office and talk about why this has gone the way it's gone. He's got some explaining to do, right? If they go into the bye week with a win, or they played, Cincinnati really, really close and, it was a battle to the end and they just lost, then okay, it's a loss. A lot of folks expected a loss, but it wasn't embarrassing. But now that it's embarrassing, I'm sure there's some tough conversations that he's going to have just about what he does as the head coach. And again, I'm not thinking that he's going to get fired. I don't even know if the Raiders plan on firing anybody this week. I know after the season there's going to be a bunch of changes, but just for the sake of in-season changes in the bye week, which is where it happens, Luke Getsy being removed from play calling duties, I definitely see that coming. And I definitely see Desmond Ridder being placed as the starting quarterback, not because Gardner Minshew was just so awful on Sunday. It's just they need something else. They again, we talked about a few weeks ago, it's evaluation season. It's evaluation season. So you might as well evaluate everybody that you have on the roster. So Tom Telesco gets a good idea of what he has, what he's working with. You saw DeCam Richardson. He got more snaps. He got up close to around 20 snaps on Sunday and really held his own as a young corner, right? So Tom Telesco wants to see those kind of guys. Yeah, Jack Jones had his nice pick six, which looked very similar to the play that he did last year against the Chargers in the runaway. But, Jack Jones, that's the one play he's made all year, right? So I don't think anyone is exempt from the evaluation process. I know Max is banged up, but I think that there's going to be, folks that are going to look and say, well, how come Max isn't making more plays? Right, even when he's out there, and I know that he doesn't have Christian Wilkins, again, not questioning him like he's not going to be on the team, not like that. But, I think it's okay to ask for and require more from your star. He is your star. He is banged up, but he's your star. And there's a few times where he rushed up the field, and the Bengals were able to just run right past him, right, hand the ball off, and boom, there's a big lane right there. Got out of the gap, and didn't have contain. So, I think that there's going to be a lot of questions on, hey, who's going to step up and who's going to really play down the stretch. Got a whole half a season left to go, right? They're 2-7. They have 8 more games left to go. When they come out of the bye, they're heading to South Beach to take on Miami, who didn't look too bad. They lost to the Bills on Sunday, but they didn't look too bad. So there's a lot of work to be done, but I do expect, and I know Antonio Pierce will be speaking with the media sometime this morning, I think around 11. I won't be there, as again, I'm here in Bristol, Connecticut. I'll be on the campus of ESPN for the next few days, which is awesome. Look forward to that, just kind of meeting and greeting with a lot of folks, doing some shows from the studio as well, since the Raiders are on a bye. Thought this was a good opportunity to get out to Bristol and like I said, shake some hands and kiss some babies. Do what we do, a little networking experience for the week or for the 3 or 4 days until I head back to Las Vegas. But I'll definitely be locked in on what AP has to say, see if he makes any changes coming out, even today, or if it's something that, we'll see once we get into, Miami's week. That's probably when some kind of announcement will be made, if there's any announcement to be had. I don't expect him just to come out and say, all right, well, we took the play calling from Getsy. All right, Desmond Ridder is now the starting quarterback. I think that he'll probably say today, while I'm still talking to the coaches, still talking to the people, evaluating Nate Hobbs, who got an ankle injury, right? See, where he's at. Colton Miller, obviously, I mentioned him with the ankle injury as well. You need to get these guys as healthy as possible. There was a lot of dudes that went down on Sunday in Cincinnati. So that's the good thing for the bye, is that at least they'll have an opportunity to get healthy. But who is it that's going to be playing post the bye week when they do head to South Beach to take on the Miami Dolphins? Well, that's still to remain to be seen, and I'm sure a lot of shuffling is going to happen throughout the course of this week. But what's on your mind? Want to hear from you, 707-654-4693. That's the Locked On Raider Podcast voicemail line. Your calls and texts are closing out the show next here on the Locked On Raiders Podcast. Before we get to that, though, I do want to tell you about a couple more great sponsors here on the Locked On Raiders Podcast, including Hillsdale College. Time is our most precious commodity. You don't want to waste it scrolling through the same mind-numbing content for hours and hours. How could you spend it wisely to improve yourself? Well, there's courses like history, economics, the great works of literature, the meaning of the U.S. Constitution. You might have studied these in school, or maybe not. Maybe if you did, you need a refresher course. Time and technology have changed a lot of things, but they have not changed basic fundamental truths about the world and our place in it. Right now, Hillsdale College hooks you up. They're offering more than 40 free. That's right, 40 free online courses. When did we ever put that together? When do we ever put school and 40 free online courses? That doesn't go together. And again, Constitution 101, Introduction to Free Market Economics, Great American Story, and a whole lot more are some of the selections that are being offered right now by Hillsdale College. How do you get in on it? Well, go right now to hillsdale.edu/lockedon to enroll. There's no cost, and it's easy to get started. That's hillsdale.edu/lockedon to register. hillsdale.edu/lockedon. I also want to tell you about the title sponsor of the show today, which is FanDuel. And, well, if you get in on the NFL action, which you should do it on FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. All new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. You can get a hunch in the middle of the game, like I did when the Raiders and the Bengals were 17-10. I was like, this ain't going to go very well. You can place your bet accordingly. You can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. Visit FanDuel.com to join today. You'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. Here we go, Raider Nation. It's segment number 3 of today's Locked On Raiders podcast. Your calls and text straight off that Locked On Raider podcast voicemail line, 707-654-4693. Let's start things off with Army Raider. He's calling to give his overall thoughts on this year's team and uses a term to describe them that no athlete will ever want to be described as. Here he is, Army Raider.
Hey, Q, it's your boy Army Raider, just calling with a few thoughts after another embarrassing performance. Just a few things. Expected a loss. I mean, I don't think we got too many more wins than left in us this year. It's just not that team. Didn't really expect a big year of this team. I was kind of in the minority and got called a hater even on your show. I think someone called in about me and my call being a little negative early in the season. But what is sad to me is I feel like this team's just soft. And that's not something I thought I'd say about an AP coach team. But if you look at just how they play, this team is just soft. It's not just the lack of talent. It's also they're just soft. They're getting pushed around. They're getting bullied. I think we are where we are with Getsy. We know he's probably not going to be here next year. Hell, I'd be surprised if he survives the bye week, to be honest with you. What is a bit shocking, though, is I was never as high on the defense as you and some others were, but I expect them to be a lot better than this. This defense is highly overrated, and I understand there's injuries on both sides of the ball, but it just is what it is, man. At this point, I just hope we get the quarterback of the future, and anyways, it's another day. Army Raider out.
Thanks so much for the call. Appreciate you, and I'm with you on the defense, man. Being overrated, right? I think that's a great way to put it. That was supposed to be the strength of the team. I talked about that in segment number 1. There's going to be questions upstairs. See, this is the big problem now with the defense not doing what they were supposed to do, what it was envisioned that they were going to do. Now the folks upstairs, when I mean folks upstairs, I'm talking about Tom Telesco, talking about front office folks, talking about Mark Davis, talking about Tom Brady, right, whatever his role is. They can question. It's okay for them to question does that style really work? Can you really lead with your defense and have your offense do just enough to win games? Or do you have to be really sharp offensively and like Kansas City, right? We know that they have the ability to be great offensively, but their defense is what's leading them right now. But they have the tools to get it done offensively. Like the Raiders, that wasn't their approach. Their approach to this year was the defense was going to do all the heavy lifting. They were going to have a strong, solid run game, and the quarterback play was going to be consistent and complementary enough to win games. Now, that vision that they had, now folks upstairs this week during the bye week, again, back to my point in segment 2, now they can question that and say, I don't know if that's really working, and I don't know if that can work. So if they decided that they wanted to move on from AP, they could say that your vision isn't one that's going to work in 2024 or 2025, or so be it, right? And so that would be the reason that they could feel comfortable to move on. Again, not saying that they're going to, just saying that could be the reason. That's part of it. Yeah, calling the team or the defense soft is definitely not something that any of the players on that team want to be. And really surprised that we didn't be having a conversation and using the word soft or overrated when it comes to the defense, especially under Antonio Pierce. But here we are. So thanks so much, Army Raider, for the call. Do appreciate you. Up next, got a text from Omar in San Antonio. This is a really lengthy one. It says, hey, Q and Raider Nation, it's Omar from San Antonio. I was on the Antonio Pierce retention crew. Stability is important, and we haven't had that in decades. He won the fans over with being genuine and not putting up with garbage. He released Marcus Peters for sloppy play and calls out players when needed to. Jones got a pick 6. Cool. But for the past 2 months, he's been avoiding getting his jersey dirty with pretend tackling. Getsy is twice as bad as McDaniel was on play call, and that's terrible. McDaniel's called only good halves, and Getsy calls only good quarters. I hear people saying Dan Campbell had a first bad year, but he also didn't have a generational talent in Bowers or Mad Max. Roster-wise, AP has a better roster than Campbell did in his first year. Him putting up with Getsy this long is fireable. Since you've been in the locker rooms, I'd like to ask you something. What exactly does losing the locker room look like? I get it, players not wanting to play for the guy, but also them refusing to take the field. Do you see AP losing it? Why or why not? How did Del Rio lose it his last year? I could say AP staying because I could see AP staying because he didn't have a quarterback, but he refuses the things not to lose. As far as quarterbacks, I feel the only generational star is 2 years away in Arch Manning. Sanders worries me as I get Lonzo LeVar Ball vibes. Finally, sorry for the long text. I'm announcing high school football games and met with the ESPN San Antonio guy. I mentioned your name. He couldn't stop saying amazing things about you and your work ethic. Sorry, I forgot his name. Have a good one, Nation. That is from Omar in San Antonio. And Omar, thanks for the text. I do appreciate you. There's a lot to unpack there. And yeah, Getsy's not a good play caller. I think that's easy to say, right? I mean, McDaniels was McDaniels, but Getsy's definitely not a play caller. To me, there's no rhyme or reason. Antonio Pierce, I don't believe he's lost the locker room. You could just tell when a guy loses the locker room, they stop listening, they stop responding, and I think that they're still responding. Even when we talk to players in the locker room, they say that, what we're doing, AP's telling us not to do it. Like, he's on top of it. We're just not executing it. So they're still putting it on them. When you lose the locker room is when you start hearing, like Josh Jacobs said last year when McDaniels was still the head coach, he said, how come you guys can't get anything going offensively? I don't get paid to answer that question. All I get paid to do is run the ball. Like, answers like that, those are when you're losing the locker room. The locker room can't stand you. So I think those guys all really still want to play for him, but they've got to prove it, and he's got to prove it. He's got to prove that he's going to be a better coach. And I've been as a matter of fact, was sticking by him and saying that he's the right guy. But, I mean, I can say it all I want. You can say it all you want if you want to, but he's got to go out there and get it done. He's got to go out there and make things happen. So there's a lot. As far as Del Rio losing the locker room the last year he was there was a lot that went into it. I don't really want to get into it, especially right now with politics being so hot. I don't want to get into all of that, but there was a lot that went into that 2017 season, man. That was a real bizarre. That was a season that there was a lot of hype around the Raiders, especially after they had made it to the playoffs in 2016. Derek had broke his leg. He's like, okay, he's going to come back. He's going to be healthy. They acquired Marshawn Lynch. They're going to be better at the running back position. Man, this team is going to be great, and it was not. And that's unfortunate that's just what happens. They keep. They'll have one really good year, and then all of a sudden they'll take 2 steps back, and that's kind of been the story of the Silver and Black. As far as quarterbacks in college, there's a lot of them, right? Sanders is one. Cam Ward is another one. Miller Moss is another one out of USC. Carson Beck is another one from Georgia, who's actually Brock Bowers' quarterback that he had at Georgia. And Carson Beck hasn't looked as good without Brock Bowers, so there's that. I mean, there's a lot of quarterbacks. Dylan Gabriel from Oregon. There's plenty of quarterbacks. I mean, you don't have to wait just 2 weeks or 2 years to get Arch Manning. I mean, there's plenty of them. Quinn Ewers at Texas, he gets injured a lot, though, so I don't like him. But for the most part, the Raiders could go and get a quarterback in the draft, and they'll have to. They'll have to. That's got to be priority number one when they do hit the offseason. Like, Tom Telesco has to do everything in his power to go get his quarterback. And for the record, I don't get those same feels, those Lonzo Ball, LeVar Ball feelings from Deion Sanders, because Deion's been a pro. He's a Hall of Famer. He's a HOFer. So he's not going to have to live through his kid. Now, he's going to want to put him in the best position, sure, right? But he's not going to have to live through him. Like, LeVar Ball literally had to live through his sons. Like, because he wasn't that guy. Deion's a Hall of Famer. Deion very easily could end up being the Florida State head coach for all we know next year, right? Once Shedeur goes wherever he's going to go, and Shedeur can sling the rock. He really can. So I don't think that would be a bad selection if the Raiders ended up with Shedeur. I think there's going to be a few teams that are going to be trying to get him. Cam Ward is also a very good selection. Very good out of Miami. Now, he's every once in a while throws the ball across the field, across his body, and that's bad to say. That's a no-no. He trusts his arm a little bit too much at times, and so it'll hurt him. But, man, that's a gamer. Cam Ward is an absolute gamer. So, and then as far as the ESPN San Antonio guy, you're probably talking about Jason Minix. He's a really good dude. I've been rocking with Jason Minix for a very long time. He used to come on my show when I was in Texas at ESPN Central Texas. We'd always talk Spurs or Cowboys or whatever the case may be. He's a really good dude. So that's probably who you're talking about. Just a fantastic dude. So anyway, thanks for the text. I do appreciate you. Sorry for the real super long response. Got one more call. How about Proto from Vancouver? He's calling to talk about Antonio Pierce as the Raiders head coach and gives his 2 cents on him.
Q, this is YTD. I'm back. I was here last week, but a little twist to this story. I am also Proto from Vancouver. And we had a thing on Twitter because when AP was hired, I couldn't believe that the Raiders would make such a bad mistake in hiring AP. I didn't see it. I didn't understand it. I thought it was stupid. I was legitimately unhappy, and I called AP a con artist. Now, I'll take that back, but I am not here to say that, yes, I was correct. AP was not the right choice. He does not know how to coach an NFL team. But don't mistake me as saying that he shouldn't have tried. I think he tried. I just think Mark Davis should have been smart enough to realize he wasn't going to be a good coach. So, again, I'm sorry for whatever happened back then, but I was correct. AP is not a good head coach. Thank you for listening.
Proto, thanks for the call. And you don't have to apologize for anything, man. You don't never have to apologize. One, I'm not too sure what happened on Twitter or who it happened with, if it was me or someone else. I don't know. There's so much that happens on Twitter. So it's never personal. I don't, it's never personal with anybody for me. And believe me, if I could show you half the DMs I get, brother. So believe me, would never take anything personal with you. I'm very much in the boat and have been in the boat of giving Antonio Pierce an opportunity to prove himself. I think he proved himself last year what he could do for the team. And if you've been listening to me for a long time, you know I've never been one that's in favor of hiring the interim. But I had a good feeling about AP. Right? I mean, again, interim coaches, it's easy to be the substitute teacher. That's what everyone says. It's hard to be the full-time guy. I had a really good feeling about him. I could very well end up being wrong. And right now, when you're 2-7, there's not really too much argument I have. Right? They're 2-7. I can't really say, well, you know what? Those 2 games they won, he was fantastic. I can't really do that. Right? So they've got a 5-game losing streak. So right now, every argument that you have on why he's not a good head coach is valid to the 100th degree. So yeah, again, don't apologize for your opinion, man. It's all good. It's free forum here, right? I don't try to be disrespectful, and I don't expect anyone to be disrespectful to anyone else. But outside of that, I mean, your opinion is your opinion. So I always appreciate it. So thanks so much for that. I do appreciate you. All right, we'll close out with one more. Text from Tim in Oregon. Hey, Q, it's Tim from Oregon. The Raiders have 4th and 4 in Bengals territory. 17 seconds left in the second quarter, and AP calls for a punt. Really? Raiders were 2-6, now 2-7, and AP plays conservative and punts? That's ridiculous, Q. This team will not win one more game this season. 2-15. I've agreed with you that AP should be the head coach next season. Now it's painfully obvious that Coach Pierce cannot be an NFL head coach. He's too conservative in my observation. The Raiders are now 2-7. Throw the playbook in the trash. Stop being conservative. Go Wild Raiders. Ritter at quarterback. Trick plays. No punts. Season is over. Have fun. Loosen up. No pressure to win. That's my opinion, Q. Happy birthday to you, my man. Have a great week. That's Tim in Oregon. Thanks so much. And I can hear the frustration in the text. Right? I get it. And, yeah, I mean, he did punt 4th and 4. But could you imagine if he went for it on 4th and 4, which I actually thought he was going to, and then they don't get it, and somehow Cincinnati scores again? Like, that would have just been, I mean, it was already, and it was close. It was 17-10 at halftime, even though I felt like it was over, probably for some of the reasons you did as well, not to mention the defense couldn't stop anybody. But, yeah, I mean, again, like I said, in segment 2, AP is going to have those conversations of why he should be the head coach. I can't, campaign for him. You can't campaign for him or even against him. He's going to have to show and explain and prove on why he should be the head coach of the Silver and Black. And so I'm sure those meetings and those conversations will be happening all week long. As far as the birthday shout out, thanks so much. I do appreciate that. Again, traveled on my birthday on Sunday to Bristol, Connecticut. Had a lot of folks hitting me up wishing me a happy birthday, so I do appreciate that. Always appreciate the birthday wishes. That's really cool. So thanks so much. And, again, I'll be here until Thursday and then fly back Thursday morning and then be back in town and doing what I do there from Las Vegas. But the show will go on each and every day, whether it's right here in my hotel room where I'm at right now or from the ESPN campus in one of the many studios that they have. But the show will go on each and every day as we always do. So till then, Raider Nation, take care of yourself, take care of your family, love on your family. Most importantly, as always, just win, baby.